All right. I see airplanes flying overhead right here in Inglewood. People are going, or rather they're coming back from places, or they could be coming to Los Angeles. It's an interesting experience. I prefer to fly. I prefer to be on the airplanes. I prefer to travel. I haven't been traveling lately, but I guess I can talk about my travel experiences. And I can also practice my language, my language skills. I was watching a video today of Korean speakers, and it reminded me, you know, how I feel about my Korean language ability. Kind of losing the sun right now. The sun's going behind the clouds. I lived in Korea for 9 years, and studying Korean for me wasn't always the easiest thing. I studied Korean at the, how did I do this? I studied Korean alone. They call that dokak. And I did that alone. And then when classes became available, I joined classes, but they weren't always available. So when I studied alone in my apartment with friends. And see, I went to Korea to be an English teacher. And being an English teacher meant that all of my time was spent teaching English. So I didn't have the time to dedicate to the task of learning the Korean language. And the Korean language is easy, it's quite simple. It was made that way, it was created that way on 10/9, October 9th. And they said that 1 year of diligent study of the Korean language can propel someone, acclimate to a higher level. They can become proficient in Korean within 1 year. This is what I heard a professional say on television in Korea. And that gave me a tremendous amount of encouragement. So I spent a lot of my time studying Korean in my apartment. And then, but I didn't have the opportunity to sit in a classroom in Korea where I would learn Korean for about 3 to 4 years after I arrived in Korea, because those 4 years were spent teaching English, and I had to just study the language on my own. About 4 years. I gave it a great effort, of course. I did my best, but being in a classroom setting was really, or rather it can be quite beneficial, quite helpful. So I guess it was around my 3rd or 4th year in Korea when I had the opportunity to sit in a classroom and study. And I was alongside my colleagues who, unlike me, hadn't put forth that much effort to study the Korean language, by themselves. So when they were in the classroom, they really weren't They weren't as good or as proficient as I had become over the years, knowledgeable. And in many of their cases, they saw it just as a little, as an interesting, nuanced experience. Oh, I'm learning the language, I'll give it a shot. Whereas I was a very serious, I approached my my language studies very seriously. Anyhow, those language classes abruptly ended because our teacher became frustrated because many of my classmates did not attend the classes. They weren't taking them seriously. These were professionals, these were professional teachers like I was, and they did not see learning Korean as a priority. And so they would skip classes and what have you. But the teacher, well, she was upset because she had to walk all the way across campus to teach these foreigners, these non-Korean, or these bratty adults, these spoiled adults, pretty much. So she complained, and then that class just, dissipated, it disappeared, and that was the end of that. Luckily, those classes were free, but the subsequent years that I worked at the university where I worked, where those classes weren't available, and I had to study on my own, or I had to pay for classes like those in the future. The next opportunity I had to study was at the YMCA, at the local YMCA in Korea, in the city of Daegu. I studied there, and I think I went through a couple of their classes. I went through a couple of the books that they taught, and that was an interesting experience and very helpful. But I still didn't feel as if, I still felt as if I needed more out of the study. I thought I could do more, and I wanted to speak Korean, more fluently. I wanted to be better. I wanted to acclimate to a higher level of proficiency, faster than I was already doing. So I eventually left Korea briefly. I still had the intention of returning to Korea, and I did. And upon my return, before returning to a job where I would teach English, I spent 1 month in a language immersion program at one of the best schools where you can learn the Korean language. It's called Sogang University. And so that experience was the immersive, intensive, language training that I desired, and I received that. So that's what I needed. That's what I desired. The only problem was it was 7 years after I had arrived in Korea, so it was long overdue. But it was well worth it. I would only hope that if I were to return to Korea, that I would have the time and the money. You need those resources to be able to pay for those classes, especially the time, and then you can devote all of your energy to the language learning task. Because when I watch those videos and I see these young people who obviously have spent a tremendous amount of their time, studying Korean, and they've already acclimated to a high level of Korean, then I'm like, man, why couldn't I have done that? I was there for 9 years. So, especially with the language being so simple, like, man, really? So, and it's not so much this thing about, oh, I desire to speak Korean better. I love K-pop. I love K-drama. I'm all into Korea. It's not so much that. It's more so having the skill, being able to speak any language is a skill, and it can allow you to broaden your horizons and broaden your experiences in life. You can talk to people about certain things that you perhaps wouldn't talk to them about otherwise, especially if there's a language barrier. Same thing with Spanish, you know. Well, it's a different experience with Spanish. With Spanish, my mom and dad paid for, they foot the bill for me to learn Spanish at a private school when I was very young. However, I didn't have, I wasn't immersed in the culture, and I didn't have the experiences to bring the, the, the language to life. So it was always something, it was always an academic endeavor. Crack the book open, read, do your best. Whereas with Korean, when I lived in Korea, it was more so, it was more than opening a book, studying, but it was also put what you just learned into practice. Go out and try to converse with people. So it was practical application, really. So it's kind of difficult today, now that I'm in Los Angeles, because I haven't found a lot of opportunities, you know, in my immediate, let's say, routine to speak Korean. I interface, or I interact more so with Spanish speakers than I do with Korean speakers. However, if I were to go to Koreatown, the number of experiences, or the interaction and the immersion factor, well, that would, you know, multiply, because in Koreatown there are more Korean speakers. So I guess what I'm saying is I have to go to Koreatown to get some practice in, if I start devoting my time to Korean in Los Angeles. So these are my language learning stories. I guess I have to try to speak some Korean and Spanish right now, huh? Yeah. Let's see. Spanish first. I'm more used to speaking Spanish, so maybe I can say some things in Spanish. Let's see. En el año 2016 comience a aprender español otra vez. En mi vida comience el primer vez a aprender español cuando estuve, o cuando era más pequeño, en la escuela primaria, en el grado tercer. Sí, pero durante mi vida no practiqué mucho, por lo tanto, mi nivel de hablar en español es más abajo de una persona que aprendió español en universidad. Todos los días puedo practicar español con hispanohablantes en la ciudad de Los Ángeles, porque hay mucha gente de Latinoamérica. All right, that was a little something there. In Korean, well, 원래는 Los Angeles에서 태어났는데 2007년에 한국으로 이사했어요. 한국인만큼 한국말 할 줄 몰라요. 그런데 말로 다시 연습하고 싶어요. Yeah. I get a little nervous. If I don't prepare what I want to say, then I don't get to say, you know, a lot. But there's a lot that I do know. And so I surprise myself when I'm interacting with people, because no matter if I learned it and forgot it, often my recall is pretty quick, and things do come back. It's pretty interesting. Even a language that I don't even study. For instance, yesterday I happened to go to the local restaurant up the street here, and there was a group of four who were speaking a language that I couldn't immediately discern. And I asked them if they were from Brazil, and they told me no, they were from France. So after just a little bit of speaking, of course in English, because that's what I speak, they left and they said goodbye. They were, I guess, trying to be friendly to me because I speak English. They said goodbye, and it immediately came to me. I said au revoir. It might be au revoir, but that's what I said. So sometimes like that in the moment, you know, things will come to me. All right, so this is me talking extemporaneously about language learning, my journey, and from this day forward, perhaps, I don't know, perhaps I'll put a greater effort into studying Korean again. Because when I see those youngsters speaking Korean, I'm like, man, I should be able to do that. 제 이름은 레리 웨이크입니다. 감사합니다. Adios. 17 minutes.